Translation and purport by Srila Prabhupada. After hearing their master's statement, that's Kamsa, what did he tell them? Anybody remember? What did Kamsa tell his friends? What statement did they hear? Should we go back a little bit? Said that was the previous verse. After that night passed, Kamsa summoned his ministers and informed them of all that had been spoken by Yogamaya, who would reveal that he who was to slay Kamsa had already been born somewhere else. So this is right after Kamsa is speaking to Vasudeva and Devaki, and he apologizes with tears in his eyes. And Yogamaya appears and tells him the child who will kill you will be born someplace else. So that's what he's telling his ministers the next day. So again, after hearing their master's statement, the envious asuras, who were enemies of the demigods and were not very expert in their dealings, advised Kamsa as follows. Great ministers, huh? They're envious, they're enemies of the demigods, and they're not very expert. Do you want those sort of people on your temple board? I don't think so. Okay, purport. There are two different types of men, the asuras and the suras. Dvau bhuta sargo lokesmin daiva asura evacha vishnu bhakta asmato daiva asura tad viparyaya padma purana. Those who are devotees of Lord Vishnu, Krishna are suras or devas, whereas those who are opposed to the devotees are called asuras. Devotees are expert in all their transactions. Yasyakti bhakti bhavati akinchana sarvar gunash tatra samsate suraha. Therefore, they are called kovida, which means expert. Asuras, however, although superficially showing expertise in passionate activities, are actually all fools. They are neither sober nor expert. Whatever they do is imperfect. Mogasha moga karmana. What does that mean? Yeah, it's Bhagavad Gita. What does that mean? They're baffled in their hopes for what are the three things Krishna lists that the demons are baffled in their hopes for? Liberation and karma and knowledge. And karma again and moksha. According to this description, the Asuras given in Bhagavad Gita 9:12, whatever they do will ultimately be baffled. It was such persons who advised Kamsa because they were his chief friends and ministers. Akarnya bhratur gaditam tam uchur deva shastrava devan prati kritamarsha daityeya natiko vidaha. After hearing their master's statement, the envious asuras, who were enemies of the demigods and were not very expert in their dealings, advised Kamsa as follows. So Kovida, or it's also called Daksha, is one of the 26 qualities of a devotee, being very expert. Being very expert. So what is expertise? Here are the demons, they weren't very expert. Atiko vidaha, they didn't have much expertise. Although Prabhupada says they can superficially show expertise in passionate dealings. And indeed, we see that, isn't it? Yes? We see that materialistic people, we see that materialistic people may superficially have expertise, and they may even have more expertise in something than a devotee. Right? I mean, I'm sure there's many materialistic people who are expert in many things that each of us are not expert in. Isn't that a fact? Right? Someone who speaks, 30 languages, and maybe you only speak one or two, and someone who can fix a car and you can barely drive it, and so there may be something like that. So what does this mean to be expert? I think this is a deep question. Prabhupada also refers to the verse that says that the non-devotees have no good qualities here in this purport. And I think it's a little bit of a problem for us. How is it? What does it mean to be expert? What does it mean to have good qualities? So let's look at what expertise means. What does it mean if we say that somebody has expertise? Any ideas? Any thoughts? Being a what leader? A thought leader. Okay. Thoughtful, you mean? Oh, okay, an innovative leader. Okay. Any other idea? What does it mean to have expertise? Yes. Okay, to be doing something to the best of your abilities, but I mean, if I played a sitar to the best of my abilities, I wouldn't have it. I'll tell you right now, I wouldn't show any expertise whatsoever. Okay, so to understand the subject matter that you're talking about, I think you're close to something, but it's not quite there. Any other idea what do we mean by being expert? Yeah. Ability above average in something, okay. Yes. Uniquely, of course, uni means one. So that would imply there would be only one expert in something. But again, special, above the average, to be uniquely doing something very good, okay, yeah? Utilizing, well, now you've got a devotee explanation of what is expertise. You're jumping to my next area, Janani Vasprabhu. So to be really expert means to do everything for Krishna's pleasure. Yes?
The more godliness, the more expert.
You're also jumping. There you go. The more godliness, the more expert. Can we get kind of just a neutral definition of expertise? Let's put aside the suras and asuras. Yes? Okay, to be very good at controlling whatever it is you're doing. Right? So to control the car, right? If your expertise is in the car, to be controlling where the flowers are in the vase or vase, however you guys say it on this side of the pond. You know, to make sure they stay in the right place and they have the right, so to be very good at controlling it. Right? Any other thoughts on what does it mean to be? We ought to know this. It's supposed to be one of the qualities of a devotee, yeah? Be very good at anything you do. Well, then, that begs the question of what is good. So we ended up with another word one has to define. Mm-hmm. To have some ability. Right? You know, when Srila Prabhupada gave a series of lectures on the Brahmacharya ashram in Mumbai in 1976 on the verses from the 7th canto about brahmacharis, which I've studied in depth because that was also about Gurukula. Prabhupada was equating the adult brahmacharya ashram in the temple to a Gurukula. And he spoke in one of those lectures about daksha, or being expert. And he said that all of the brahmacharis should know something of everything and everything of something. Right? Also in the 2nd canto of the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada says that the Gurukula is for giving specific training in a livelihood. Obviously that's for the majority who are going to go on to make a livelihood in the Grahastha ashram. But even those who are going to go on to prepare for the sannyas ashram and skip the Grahastha ashram, to know something of everything and everything of something. So obviously you can't know everything of something. Only Krishna can know everything of something. But that would be an expert. You know your craft, whatever it is. You know your craft. You understand it. You can execute it better than someone else. You get a good result. You can control it. And I would say also that other living entities are happy. That would have to be part of the expertise. You know, if I'm very expert at controlling what services get done in the temple as far as scheduling and etc., but everybody hates me, then I wouldn't be much of an expert, correct? Yes? Have you ever lived in a temple like that? I have. So, you know, that's not really expertise. So expertise is you're making everybody is satisfied. Right? I don't know if all of you know Akrura Prabhu, who lived in London for a long time. He was associated with the Soho Temple. So he would share with me often books about leadership and management, which is one of my fields. And one of the books he shared with me is called Good to Great. It's one of the classics in the management field. And they were just looking at expertise in making money only. That was their criteria for choosing businesses that had gone from being a good business to a great business and sustained their greatness. And they had looked at different qualities of the leaders in these companies, what created their expertise. And they found out that some of what created their expertise was, interestingly enough, humility. The way the authors put it is when there was something that went right, they looked out the window. Something that went bad, they looked in the mirror. In other words, when things went right, they gave the credit to everybody else. When things went wrong, they took all the blame for themselves. They were more interested in the mission than in themselves. This is something we see in Srila Prabhupada, that we're celebrating ISKCON's 50th anniversary, due in no small part to Srila Prabhupada in 1970, when he didn't have any mature leaders on any level of maturity. any measure of leveling, any level of measuring maturity, that he created a GBC and got himself out of the center of management, which had some dire consequences for ISKCON, by the way, which persist even until 2016, that we had people, only a year in the Hare Krishna movement with no management experience who were only 23 years old, running an international society. So we still have some repercussions from that down to the present day. But Prabhupada got him, he didn't want it to be a personality cult, in other words. So people who are expert there, it's not about them. The people who make their work about them, their expertise is all about them. As soon as they get out of the picture, everything falls apart. So the real expert is somebody who's concerned with the mission, who's concerned with the product they're making. They're more concerned with what they're doing and how they're interacting with others than just getting something for themselves. Now, though there's many studies like that one of what constitute expertise, there's not very many studies that get into what's the topic of this verse, which a couple of you already touched on because you're all suras and not asuras. And that is the spiritual factor, or we could even say the modal factor. There's a modal factor and there's a spiritual factor, which, if not taken into account, doesn't get you real expertise. So you can do all of your studies, your quantitative, your qualitative, your longitudinal studies of what makes an expert in business or what makes an expert in music or what makes an expert in art or, I've taught sociology of religion at Bhaktivedanta College, and we look there at people who study religions. What makes an expert religion? They study this kind of thing. You remember that? He was my student, poor guy. Yeah? You were my student there too, weren't you? Oh my goodness. I'm surprised you have anything to do with me at all. So there are sociologists who study, what makes an expert religion? How does a religion persist? And they define expertise in religion in terms of externals. Does the religion last for at least 100 years, and does it have a certain number of followers? Which, by the way, only about 1 out of every 100 religions do. Most religions don't last very long or amass a large number of followers. So they look at that kind of expertise, and then they analyze the religious organization, and they say, okay, well, religious organizations that do this tend to persist, and those that don't do this. But there's something else that they're not looking at. And that's what Srila Prabhupada's talking about in this verse. So we're going to examine today expertise without Krishna and expertise with Krishna. Is that all right? And because it's one of the 26 qualities of devotees, and because it's one of the principles that Srila Prabhupada said should be taught in the Brahmachari ashram, I would assume also in the Brahmacharini ashram, and because this is one of the main centers of training devotees anywhere in the world, I think it might be something relevant for us. So without Krishna, there's the appearance that everything is working well. Everything looks good on the surface, at least for a time. But the results, Prahlad Maharaj says, are what? What does Prahlad Maharaj say? He said, when you try to find happiness here, the results you get are, well, definitely temporary. Anista asukham. Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita, anityam asukham. Dukalayam shashvatam. Everything's temporary. Even the expert results we get externally as devotees are also, by the way, temporary. At least in the external features. But Prahlad Maharaj also says that whenever you try to do something good in the world, you inevitably get results that are the what? Opposite of what you desire. You get the opposite of what you desire. We can just look at a very few examples. So one of my favorite is illegitimate children. So in 1960, in the United States, 4% of children were born out of marriage. Now it is 40%. And what happened between 1960 and today? What happened was widespread contraceptives and birth control. And the people who propounded that there should be widespread contraceptives and birth control did it with the purpose of what? What was their purpose? Reducing, no, not births specifically, reducing illegitimate births, reducing unwanted children. It wasn't propounded as we're trying to reduce births in general. It was propounded that we want every child to be born into a loving family and be wanted. And therefore, we should have birth control and abortion to prevent unwanted, unloved children. They weren't just saying we want to prevent children in general. And what was the result? Exactly the opposite. The number of children who are born unwanted, unloved has increased by 10 times. The amount of child abuse has greatly increased. Now, people might say, well, people are just reporting it more. That might be true also. But certainly what's being reported is just increased phenomenally. The instability in society is increased. They were thinking this was a way we were going to have a more stable society. What it led to was people delaying marriage and people not having kids. And sociologically, as soon as you get to 17% of the population being born out of marriage, your society starts falling apart. So a lot of the instability and the crime and, frankly, the terrorism and all these things we're seeing in society are caused by that very thing which they thought would create stability in society. Another good example, this is something I learned in a graduate policy class, was there was a law passed in America to help people with disabilities. Good idea, right? You want to help people with disabilities? Sounds like a good idea. So they passed a law that a deaf person seeing a doctor had to be provided with an interpreter free of charge. That sound like a good idea? Deaf people would get better medical care, right? Unfortunately, the government didn't provide the funds to the doctors to pay the interpreter. And an interpreter for deaf people is very expensive. It's also very tiring. You know, when I've been in places where there were sign language interpreters, they change every half an hour so they don't get tired. The doctors simply couldn't afford to hire the interpreters. Now, it's very easy to tell whether or not a patient is deaf. Right? You can tell when they try to make an appointment over the phone, can't you? So it was very easy for them to weed out deaf patients. And what happened was the deaf patients couldn't get medical care at all. So it went from trying to facilitate them getting medical care to they weren't able to get medical care. Or we have, our modern technology, the little box that I'm sure most of you have, that allows you to communicate with anybody all over the world instantly, to exchange files. I mean, it's pretty amazing. I can just take out this little teeny tiny box and I can send you a file from the cloud. It's not even on my little box, and I can send a file to you in another part of the world in 2 seconds. I mean, it's pretty amazing. Having these little boxes that communicate all over the world, it allows you, what I've been able to do with it is publish books. We published 83 books without an office. We had no office, and engaged 200 devotees, many of them here in London, over 3 years, with editors and illustrators, without having an office, without having to pay people a full-time salary, without having to provide all the machines and all like that. So many wonderful things, but what does it also produce? It's produced a situation where people have no border between their work and their life. It used to be that you had work at the end of the day and you went home to your family and then you could, hear Shastra in the evening, and now it's just your work follows you everywhere. It follows you out to the beach on your vacation. And people's stress level is increasing so much that, the number of people on psychotropic medicine is just through the roof. Or something like psychotropic medicine. Okay, we're going to have all these chemicals to give people mental peace and balance and so forth. But the water treatment plants can't handle it. So these chemicals are going in the water system. And it's making very mellow fish. And they're just like, okay, big fish, you can come eat me. It's really a problem. It's also feminizing the fish. It's changing the gender of the fish. All the hormones that are being put into the water system. So we can analyze one after another, after another, after another. Antibiotics, when I was a little kid. Antibiotics and vaccines when I was a child were going to cure all disease on the planet. Any of you who are around my age, you may remember. Yeah, right? Remember that? We were going to wipe out disease. And antibiotics have created superbugs that now there's no cure for. They've created worse diseases than they have cured. Plus, they mess up your whole digestive system and so many things. So this is expertise done without vision, without knowledge. And then also, without Krishna, we find people are damaged. You know, a lot of the machines we use, you may know, are at the cost of people. That there are people working without proper medical care. They get injured on the job. Oh, well, too bad, you're fired. You know, they're breathing in so many toxic fumes. They're working with so many toxic chemicals. A lot of the food we eat, the machines we use, the fabrics we use, is at the cost of people's lives and you know, people's health and happiness. It's making people unhappy. What to speak of what's being done to the animals. I mean, unspeakable. We won't mention it in the temple room. Absolutely unspeakable. Horrors out of some, you know, Marquis de Sade torture chamber is being done to the animals. And even what's being done to the plants. You know, genetically modifying them and pouring chemicals over their roots and what's being done to the earth. And so there's so many, in order to produce all this expertise, which causes an opposite result, anyway, humans and animals and plants and the planet itself is being harmed. So great harm being done to create an expertise in something that simply produces an opposite result. Would we call that expertise? Is such a person very expert? You know, if you go into a company, you know, I'm going to take over as the expert manager, and all of the innovations that you do end up producing the opposite result, and you fry out all your employees, and you fry out all your customers, and you make it so you can't get the product anymore, would we put that as, oh, that's a great company? And if you don't have God consciousness, that's what happens. So why? Why do you need to have God consciousness? Because in the modern, and we'll make it general, we'll say God consciousness will be very non-sectarian. Sharayamutam datam tapasatam kritam tayat asari chuchite parta nachitat prechinoiya. It's all useless in this life and the next. Why? Why is that? And I think we have to ask why. Because in modern society, which is a very secular society, you don't know what secular means? The standard sociological definition of secular. It means you don't explain things in terms of God. You don't see things ashvaraya. There's no faith in God mixed up. Well, this thing happened just by chance. And this in my life, I don't explain my life in terms of God. I don't explain the world in terms of God. So why is that? Well, here we see envious. Krita Amar Shaha. That materialistic people are more or less envious. What does it mean to be envious? It means I want more than you. You know, if you're a little bit envious, it means, okay, you can be happy as long as it's not more than my happiness. If you're, you know, moderately envious. You can have a nice car as long as my car is better. You can have a beautiful wife as long as my wife is more beautiful. You can know the Shastra as long as I know more. You know. You can have the nice prasadam as long as I get more. Or at least as much. So if you're even less envious, at least I have to have as much. And if you're really envious, you don't want anybody to have anything. Or you want to make sure everybody has far less than you. And it's interesting that Narada Muni tells Dhruva Maharaj that if you conquer this envy, you don't have any material miseries. If any of us are interested in getting free of the material miseries. And so Narada Muni tells Dhruva Maharaj, when you see someone greater than you, if you're joyful, someone equal, you make friendship, someone lower, you pick them up, you won't have any material misery. But those who are envious, when they see someone higher, they want to pull them down. Like Bhaktisiddhanta said, right? Oh, I can't believe he's a high court judge. I knew him when he was a boy. No way. No, I saw him sitting on the bench. He's there. Oh, well, he must not be getting paid. You know? So I saw this devotee. He's really blissful. Nah, he couldn't be blissful. He's just faking it. Right? Nah, he's coming every day. You know, he's really fixed in his sadhana. Yeah, but his heart must be dirty. You know, so somehow to pull them down. And for practically every leader in our Krishna consciousness movement, somebody has taken the time and trouble to make a website just to criticize them. Did you know that? almost anyone who has a leadership position in the Hare Krishna movement, there's somebody who's gone to all the trouble and expense to make a whole website. And for some of them, they're so qualified, they get several websites criticizing them. And just tear them down, tear them down, tear them down. And when you're envious, when someone's equal to you, you brag. You try to push yourself above them. Well, I did this and I said that. And if you're really expert at your enviousness, you'll brag subtly. If you're not so expert, but if it's, the time when I met the queen, yeah, it was really nice. And, you'll kind of bring it in there somehow. And if you're really envious, when people are lower than you, you want to keep them down. You don't want to give them anything. They're the youth, oh, let them be down there. Or they're the women, or they're not Prabhupada disciples, or they're not sannyasis, or they're not. Keep them down, keep them down. Don't let them have some facility that I have. And non-envious is when you see someone who's greater than you, you're happy. Wow, they have something greater than me. They're more advanced. They've only been in Krishna consciousness for a year, and I've been chanting for my whole life, and they're more advanced. How wonderful that is. Right? And you meet somebody who's equal, and you just try to be friends with them. And you meet someone's lower, and you pull them up. Hey, come and get all the facility that I have. Like Prabhupada told Jamuna, he said, if you don't teach what you know, then you'll become envious. So if someone's envious, how can they possibly be expert? Because their basic motivation is harming others. And part of expertise is everybody's happy. Everybody's satisfied. It benefits everyone. So an envious person, it's just not possible. The more envy you have, the less you can be expert in what you're doing. It may look good for a while. It may look good for a while. But people become sorry, and people become upset. And I'm sorry to say this, but we have this problem also in our Hare Krishna movement. It's not like Arvinda Sri Prabhu likes to say, it's not like everybody in the Hare Krishna movement is a perfectly pure devotee, and everybody outside the Hare Krishna movement is, somebody with horns and fangs and a tail. It's not. I'm sorry if you thought that way. But it's not like that. And we also have sometimes, devotees who are really expert in something, but they're stepping on everybody. And people walk away and they say, wow, I don't want anything to do with this anymore. I have an email sitting in my inbox right now. I'm not quite sure how to answer it. I got fried by this thing in the institution or that thing in the institution. So we don't want to be expert like that. We don't want that kind of expertise. Now, there's another way in which those who are not with Krishna cannot be truly expert and not have any good qualities, and I speak about this a lot, so I wanted to mention this just as one note among many. And that is that those who are not with Krishna are always in a state of fear. Now, to some extent, fear is just part of having a material body, as explained in Bhagavad Gita 14:22 to 25, where Krishna says, those who do not hate illumination, attachment, and illusion when they appear, nor long for them when they disappear. And Prabhupada talks there in the purport. He said that the modes of nature are going to act as long as we have a material body. But the point is to be neutral, to be separate from them. So just like the body is going to feel hungry, the mind is going to feel fear. But it's a question of like rivers entering into the ocean, which is always being full, but it never overflows its banks. But for the materialistic people, identifying with the material body and mind, they are completely consumed with fear because a material body and a material mind are really scary. How fragile is our body? Pretty fragile, right? A little slip, and you can end up in a wheelchair. Isn't it a fact? A fever, a slip on the stairs, a car out of control. I was recently visiting my sister-in-law, brother-in-law, and she had been visiting a friend of hers some years ago, got up in the middle of the night to use a toilet, opened the wrong door, fell down the cellar stairs, and she's never fully regained her memory or fully regained the use of her hand. I remember her husband, my brother-in-law, said to me, he said, just 1 second can change everything. So that's pretty fearful if you're trying to depend on your body for your happiness and your functionality and your identity, and you've got this thing that's like a piece of glass. And then our mind. Our minds are pretty fragile also, aren't they? Anybody have a super dependable mind? Hare Krishna. So, if we're depending on our mind, okay, that's how I'm going to access my knowledge and my creativity and my connections. And, if that's our shelter, then we're also going to be full of fear. If our shelter is in things, our car, our home, our clothes, our little computer boxes, then we're also going to be full of fear because, they break, they get lost, they get stolen. If our shelter is in other people, or animals, the cows, the whatever, my pet dog, my pet cow, or my family, my mother, my father, my husband, my wife, or even, my brahmachari buddies. That's also shaky, isn't it? When you need people, they may not be there. So if we're depending on other people or animals, other living entities, we're also going to be full of fear. Today they may like us, tomorrow they may not like us. So people who are in these modes of passion, ignorance, even frankly goodness, they're full of fear because all of their shelters are, what does the Bhagavatam say? Fallible soldiers. Like I had a cousin who liked to play with plastic soldiers. Whenever I visited my auntie and uncle's house, I had to play with plastic soldiers with him because he wouldn't play with anything else. So if those are our soldiers, if those are our protectors, a bunch of little plastic guys. I remember they were all green colored, even the faces, little green plastic soldiers. Our body, our mind, our things, and the other jivas in our life. They're all fallible soldiers. And if that's what our identity is, if our upadhis, our identities, our abhiman, is all wrapped up in our body and our mind and things and other people, and they're what's going to give us happiness, and they're what's going to give us a sense of control, and they're what's going to give us peace and meaning and love and excitement and all the needs that we have, freedom, then we're going to be constantly in a state of fear because everything we're depending on is shaky. Anityam, asukham. Not only shaky, but not even very satisfying. When it isn't shaking, it's not very satisfying. Isn't it? Just constant disappointment. So if one is full of fear about one's basic self-preservation, if one's identity is wrapped up in a body and mind and things and other conditioned living entities, if that's what's wrapping up your sense of self and your sense of being and your sense of identity and all of your shelters, then you're always going to be worried about self-preservation. Constantly. It may not be right at the forefront of your mind, but it'll be in the background. Like we recently at the Radha Govinda Temple, New York, and there's the underground trains that go under the building. So every few minutes. If you're not used to it, you think it's an earthquake. But if you live there, it just becomes background. Oh yeah, the building shakes. Like the first night we slept in the ladies' ashram, it was really hard. People upstairs, the furniture's creaking, and then, you don't get any sleep at that. We didn't get sleep that night, so the next day I tried to take a nap, and then they're sweeping the hallway, and as they sweep the hallway, they bang the broom into the wall. And then there's the washing machines, beep, beep, out in the hallway. And at first you can't sleep, and then after a day you get used to it, and then it does, you don't hear it anymore. You understand? It's still there, but you don't hear it anymore. So the materialistic people lose their awareness of this constant state of fear. It's not in their conscious awareness, but it's there all the time. And this desire for self-preservation. So when you have a desire for self-preservation as your primary drive, then you will only show good qualities and expertise when it suits your self-preservation. And we can all think about this, right? We're all honest people, right? Right? I don't have to worry about my jumper over there on the windowsill. But would anyone here say, well, I'm perfectly honest? And I think we're all serious sadhakas here. Yes, I think so. But would anyone say, I'm perfectly serious sadhaka? Could anyone say that? Why is it that we have our ideals of character and behavior and we fall short of our ideals? If you think about it, think about the last time you were less than honest, then we'll see that there was some kind of fear. If I'm perfectly honest here, I might lose something I already have, or I might not gain something that I want. And when that fear of self-preservation kicks in, then our good qualities, our expertise go completely out the window, and all we become concerned about is ourself. So if you're in the mode of ignorance, your fear is very deep and pervasive. It doesn't take much. You could think that the line is very small. The cup's like very small, just a little bit of fear sets it off and their good qualities are gone. You're in the mode of passion. Prabhupada talks about here about the mode of passion, which is interesting because generally the mode of passion is for the great kings, but even the demons can be in the mode of passion. So when you're in the mode of passion, it's a little higher. You're going to stick to your principles through more threats. But again, some threat to your self-preservation is finished. And the mode of goodness is much higher. But even in the mode of goodness, the essential feature of the mode of goodness is still me. In the mode of ignorance, it's I want to satisfy me as identified by the mind and body as quickly as possible. And if I can do it in a nice way, okay. But if a nice way is not the most immediate availability, then I'll do it in a not nice way. Because all I care about is immediate gratification. Fast food, who cares what violence was involved, how sick it's going to make me. I get something to eat quickly. Mode of passion, you're willing to have great determination to achieve your goal. But it's still all about satisfying the body and mind, and it's about getting acclaim and honor for society. In the mode of goodness, it's about inner harmony and balance. And we were speaking last night about forgiveness. And if you say, if you're forgiving, you'll feel peaceful, you'll feel joyful, you'll feel balanced, you'll get a sense of closure in your life. And I could see that most of the people in the room who were just starting their Krishna consciousness, they're like, yeah, I want that. But that's sattva. It's still about me. My peace, my harmony, my balance, my closure, my equanimity. And if your peace, your balance, your closure, your equanimity is threatened, then again, bad qualities. We see this with some of the great yogis, right? Well, that Vishwamrita Muni, he got so angry at Ramba because he had already had it with Menaka. He'd already been disturbed from his practices with Menaka, that when Ramba came, he was angry. How dare you come here and disturb my peace and equanimity? Whereas Haridas Thakur wasn't angry with the prostitute. He said, sit down and listen while I chant Hare Krishna. He didn't jump into bad qualities, you understand? Because he didn't feel threatened. So somebody who has fear of self-preservation, which comes from having shaky shelters, has a limit to good qualities. And therefore, even though such persons may display many good qualities, and the higher you are in the modes, the more good qualities you'll display under the more circumstances. But the ultimate quality of such a person is self-preservation on a false ground of self. Therefore, one can say there's not really any good qualities at all, because the only quality is ultimately selfishness. Although such persons, especially if they're highly advanced in sattva gun, may display more good qualities than a beginning devotee externally. All right, now how do we become expert with Krishna? What is expertise with Krishna? Expertise with Krishna is fully satisfying to oneself. Yadyatma supersediti, savaipam samparo dharma. Yadyatma supersediti. Fully satisfies the self and others, even if externally it's not perfect. When Vidura or Vidura's wife offered Krishna the banana peels instead of the bananas. That's not very expert from an external position. But Krishna was happy, and actually Vidura and his wife were also very happy. They were a little embarrassed at first, but they also felt very happy and very satisfied. And the results are what you actually desire. You get the actual results. I mean, such is true even to a large extent when you go to the mode of goodness, because in the mode of goodness, you can see what is to be done, what is not to be done, what is liberating and what is binding, what is good, what is bad. In the mode of passion, you can't. And you think, antibiotics, that's going to be good. Birth control, that's going to be good. But in your mode of goodness, you can see further. You have clearer vision because you're not as envious. And you have a mood more of helping others. And in bhakti, it's completely clear. You're out in the sunshine as the sun lights up everything in the daytime. Ignorance is removed. And you can really see what's best for yourself and what's best for others. You don't even have to ask somebody. You see it yourself. Pratyaksha dharmam. Dharma. What is dharma? What is right? Becomes immediately obvious. And so everything you do benefits you now and forever, and benefits everyone else you deal with now and forever. And that's true even if someone has just a brief encounter with such a person. Right? Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Shastra Koi. Lava Matra, Sadhu Sangha, Sarva Siddhi Hoi. Siddhi is also expertise, perfection. Just an 11th of a second association with a person who's in that consciousness can bring you all benefit. Can give you prema bhakti. Because everything they do is benefiting everyone. They don't have a worry. Such persons have no worry about self-preservation. What is it? Na jayate miyate va kadachit nayam bhutva bhavita va nabuyaha ajo inchasasvato yam prano nahanyamate hanyamane shrive. Bhaktivedanta Swami likes to tell the story when he was new to Krishna consciousness in the former Soviet Union. And the KGB called him into their office. Because he was already a graduate student, big person, very qualified person. And they said, we need you to stop this chanting of Hare Krishna, work for us. So he was scared. And he was talking to the devotees. He said he was talking to this one lady devotee. He said she was very short and very thin. Tiny, physically very tiny. And a woman. And she looked at him and she said, "You're not that body. They can't do anything to you at all." And he was a new bhakta, and he thought, wow, if this tiny little woman can be fearless, what's my problem? And then he went back to meet with the KGB, and as he was meeting with them a second time, he started meditating on the mantra, and the mantra just came to him, not from his own mind. It just simply came to him and surrounded him. And he said, I don't have to have any fear. So, abhaya charanara vindare. The devotee who has fearlessness, not because they're in the mode of goodness, and they have this inner equanimity, but because they have the right shelter. Because they have the right shelter. They have a shelter, what does it Krishna say? Nir yoga kshema atmavan. Give up all desires for gain and safety and be established in the self. They have a shelter in their own self, their real self. As Jivara Saurabhaya Krishnara Nityadasha. I am the servant of Krishna. Like the little child, Prabhupada says, holding the hand of the father. That's my real identity. So I have nothing to fear. And in that real identity, with nothing to fear, one can fully satisfy everyone without thinking, well, if I give you everything, what will be left for me? I was a big convention the devotees held in Hungary about the environment, and they had also some non-devotee speakers, and one of them was speaking and saying, there's not enough resources to go around, and we all want to live at the level of the Americans, and the only way we can do that is to have as few children as possible, so we reduce the number of kids, and therefore we'll all be able to live like the rich Americans we see on TV. So the devotees don't think like that. They have Om Purnamada Purnamidam Purna Purnadudachate Purnasya Purnam Adaya Purnam Eva Vasishyate. Infinity minus infinity is infinity. So if I'm in touch with the infinite, I can have everything and overflowing, as David said, my cup runneth over. So I can do things that give infinite benefit to everyone, and I still get infinite benefit. And what the devotees do, whether external or internal, whether it's talking about Krishna, whether it's building a beautiful temple, whether it's distributing prasadam, whether it's distributing books, is done for that ultimate result, for that ultimate benefit. And even if on the external platform, like it says that these literatures, even if imperfectly composed, even if there's something wrong with the grammar or something wrong with the spelling, obviously we should try to fix the grammar and the spelling. But even if there's something wrong with those, the real expertise of the devotee is doing something that has not just the desired result, but infinitely so. So in that way, the devotee is truly expert. And therefore, Krishna wants devotees to be in charge of everything. Like he wanted Maharaj Yudhisthira, I'm just reading now in the Bhagavatam, about the Rajasuya sacrifice. Just this morning I was reading, just got to the killing of Shishupal. Krishna taking out his disc. And Krishna wants Maharaj Yudhisthira to be the ruler. Krishna wants devotees who are expert in business, in farming, in cow protection, in dance, in art, in music, in plumbing, electricity, in recycling and garbage collection, and of course in Shastra and in scholarliness and in teaching and in guiding and in healing and everything that you can think of, every occupation that one can think of. In all of the Varnas, Krishna wants expert students and expert family persons and expert retired persons and expert renounced persons. He wants all of those, at least the leaders. At least he wants the leaders to be free from envy. He wants the leaders to have a shelter at his lotus feet, which gives one abhayacharanaravindare, which gives one fearlessness and freedom from envy. If I'm in touch with the infinite and I have everything and I never die and I can never get hurt, why should I envy anybody? Let everybody have everything and I can still have everything too. Yes, when Krishna's in the Rasa Leela, each gopi has Krishna all to herself. She doesn't have to take Krishna away from the other gopis to have Krishna all to herself. You follow? Everybody can have Krishna. Each cowherd boy, they think, oh, Krishna's facing me. Krishna's just looking at me. So when we connect like that, then we become really expert. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't study recipes if we're in the kitchen. It doesn't mean that. We used to think that in the beginning of the Hare Krishna movement. I think there's still some remnant of that some places. That, the main criteria is you chant 16 rounds and you show up for Mangal Artik every day and you only eat prasadam. And when my husband and I first opened a Gurukula in Detroit, I had to secretly go take professional training classes. If the devotees knew that I was going and learning anything, then they would have said, oh, now you're not fit. Isn't that odd? You're not fit to be a teacher if you're learning professionally how to be a teacher. Get your head around that one. So, we used to think that learning anything from the people who were expert at it materially would be a disqualification. So, of course, we should do that too. If you're a cook, you should learn how to cook. If you're repairing the cars, you should learn how to repair the cars. If you're cleaning, you should learn how to clean. Right? That's also an art. If you're dressing the deities, you should learn how to dress the deities, just like you have your academy, right, Janani Vasprabhu? You don't just say to people, if you're sincere, that's all. Just be sincere. Just chant Hare Krishna, close your eyes, and with all your sincerity, just put on the turban. Do you tell them that? No, I've been there, to the Mayapur Academy. And they're practicing, and somebody critiques. I wish we would do this for preaching. Oh my God, I'm wanting this ever since I joined the Hare Krishna movement. They teach preachers how to preach. Teach people how to be expert in speaking and presenting. That's the next thing we need to do, Teach the brahmanas public speaking and debate and logic. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare. So that's real expertise. Real expertise is Krishna consciousness. And of course, if we're Krishna conscious, we should also want to gain the externals to please Krishna. Not because I think that way I'll be able to control the material energy or something like that, or I'll get praise and adoration and I'll be able to have more expert, fallible soldiers. But I want to make a nice flower arrangement so Krishna will smile, and I want to make a nice food preparation so Krishna will smile, and I want to try to lead and manage the devotees nicely so Krishna will smile. Prabhupada said the residents of Vrindavan, they only want Krishna to smile. So how do we do this? How do we go to actual expertise? Sometimes devotees think we want to reject material expertise, so we'll just become, clumsy oafs. But how do we do this? So we have to have faith in the Supreme. We have to have Krishna as our shelter. And Krishna is my only shelter. Mam ekam sharanam vraja. Just Krishna. Just Krishna. Not the body, not the mind, not other living entities, not my things. Only Krishna. No, I can take shelter of other jivas who help me take shelter of Krishna, like we study in Manashiksha. Kintu prabhurya priya evatasya. So because they are dear to Krishna, they help me get Krishna's shelter. But I don't take shelter of them independently. Like we don't take shelter of even the demigods, and even Lord Brahma, who's one of our gurus, he's the leader of our sampradaya, but we don't take shelter of him independently of Krishna. So just to take shelter of Krishna. Nir yogakshema atmavan, not to worry about gain and safety, be established in the self. Yogakshema vaham yaham, you will take care of me. You will meet my needs. You have always been meeting my needs. You are meeting my needs in the past, the present, and the future. And I never die, and I never get hurt, and I never get insulted, and I never get anything. All our fears about being helpless, humiliated, in pain, disabled, these are our main fears, yes? To be helpless, to be humiliated, to be in pain, to be disabled. I can't be any of those. I'm a soul. All those things can happen to the body, and they probably will at some point, but they can't happen to me. And if I have Krishna's shelter, then I have no fear. And to take that shelter at every moment, at every moment, at every moment, at every moment. Not like a materialistic fruitive worker who's thinking, well, I'm going to do my sadhana, and later I'm going to get Krishna's shelter. That's the offense of thinking that our sadhana is some kind of ritualistic behavior that will bring us to heaven eventually. But right now, Mama Nusram Yujacha, think of Krishna while we're acting. At every moment, Krishna is my shelter. At every moment is Krishna's shelter. And at every moment, let me try to please him. At every moment, let me try to please him. And then naturally, we'll become free from fear. Naturally, we'll become non-envious as a natural byproduct. And then whatever we learn to do in Krishna's service will be real expertise. And if we can fill the world, at least in leadership positions, with people in this mentality, then the world will change and become like Satyayuga. Then it will be an actual golden age. And then all the people in the world will be happy. Not like these foolish demons here. So questions, comments, additions, subtractions, corrections, chastisements. Yes, here we go with the difficult question.
No.
Not this time?
Very simple questions.
You won't be doing your Swadharma, Prabhu.
Mataji, thank you very much for a very erudite lecture, which I enjoyed very much. Actually, what you have done is to open up a whole new can of worms, you know. And
I told you we were going to do this.
Yes, so I've got
Okay.
many questions and comments, but because
Let's start with one.
Time is short, I'll just
Yes.
focus on two.
Oh, okay, two, all right.
I mean, you developed the theme of how bad the situation is in most countries, especially in America and so on.
Well,
being so,
you don't all mind that I pick on America, right? As long as I didn't pick on the UK, it's okay.
did you speak to anyone from this idiotic company called Monsanto?
Have I spoke to anybody from Monsanto?
That's right.
No, I don't have any friends in Monsanto to speak to. They haven't invited me in.
Your work is cut out. If ISKCON tries to be or wants to be responsible and relevant to society,
Yes.
then you should speak to people like Monsanto, AstraZeneca, and so on.
Well, I'll tell you what. You know what? If you can arrange it, I'll do it.
I don't have that kind of.
And neither do I.
Okay,
So you can also talk to Radha Gokulananda and ask them to
The
arrange
thing
it.
is, you can do quite a lot of things. For example, the main cheerleader of Monsanto was, guess who?
I don't know.
Ex-President Dumbo.
I don't have any connection with these people, Prabhu. What I would suggest you do, instead of bringing up that to me here in this place now, what I would suggest you do is you can work with people who have those connections and see if you get people, it doesn't have to be me, and see if you can get devotees into those places.
Because you are an American, and America has got all the clout. I think you're a better
Yes,
place to
Prabhu. It's
do
not
it.
that every single American citizen has all the clout. Then what was your second question? Please try to arrange that. That's something to arrange. You can make that one of your
It's
missions.
not just President Dumbo, but also that
You ask Radha Gokulananda to
very
empower
weird
you.
guy called
Okay,
Dick Cheney. You know.
Can we go to question 2?
Yes.
Yes.
Question 2, we should not be sort of afraid of changes which are for the worse. Because ultimately, what right have we got to claim that we want to live forever? We can't.
We should not be afraid of changes that are for the worse.
No, because you see, in the material world, can you show me anything that lasts forever? No. It starts with the beginning, it has a beginning, a middle, and even stars and galaxies. They also
Absolutely.
follow this procedure.
Yes.
That because we don't have this, we should really look for answers in thermodynamics. For example, it says in the second law of thermodynamics there's something called entropy, which
Yes.
is disorder, which is increasing all the time. There's no way in which you can stop it or retard it.
But you know what? Even though Dukalayam Ashashvatam and Anityam Asukam, and even though everything here on the external level follows the law, the second law of thermodynamics and entropy, and not only on this planet, Krishna says, Bhutva Bhutva Praliyate, on all the planets,
I think he's
there is something.
I think he's plays a trick on us.
There is something that is not subject to the law of entropy.
What's that?
And not only does it not degrade, but it increases dynamically forever. And when we're in touch with that thing, then even if externally our body falls apart, our mind falls apart, our home falls apart, our whole planet falls apart, the whole universe falls apart, that thing goes on increasing eternally. And when you're in touch with that thing, which goes on increasing eternally and is never subjected to the law of entropy, then even the external things you do that do fall apart are surcharged with that spiritual energy and give you and everyone who contacts them a touch with that which increases forever through the crumbling things. Just like this temple is definitely not going to exist in this form 1,000 years from now. It just isn't. It can't.
Nothing will, as a matter of fact.
Well, if it's made of stone, it can exist for 1,000 years. If it's made of solid stone, it can exist for several tens of thousands of years. This building is not. It can't. However, what happens in this building, which will crumble, absolutely, definitely, without any doubt whatsoever. But there's something happening here that will not crumble. And not only will it not crumble, it will go on increasing and increasing and increasing in quantity and in quality forever, eternally. And that is what we need to get in touch with. So, thank you.
Thank you.
But no, we shouldn't be afraid of the external crumbling. We shouldn't be afraid of old age and death and destruction externally. Anybody else have anything? Okay, well, thank you very much. Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. And thank you very much for your hospitality here and your wonderful example of worshiping Radha Gokulananda, Sitaram, Lakshman, Hanuman, Gauri Tai, distributing Srila Prabhupada's books, distributing prasadam, educating the children, educating the adults. Thank you very much.